Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And if there's some noise in the background, it's some very intense winds here tonight. It's a bit blustery. I don't know if that'll be noticed or not, but if it is, my apologies. I just was very eager to comment on this topic for tonight while it's still topical, let's say. So, sometime last year, we had a number of people who were campaigning against the OSR, right? That were claiming that the OSR is toxic, it should be shut down, banned. People involved in it, especially people like the RPG Pundit, should be forbidden from ever, publishing RPGs ever again, right? And, one of the main attacks is the claim that this was obviously conservatives. That's very scary because we know that all conservatives are I don't know what. Well, they don't agree with what people from Seattle think, that's for sure. But second, toxic masculinity, right? It's all these evil men doing terrible things, right? And among the people making these accusations were some men, but that's okay because these are proud male feminists, right? That are woke, they're social justice warriors, right? And there were three that were particularly prominent to me, and now two of the three have basically been involved in serious scandals. Last year it was Zach Smith, and now early this year, as of yesterday, we have Adam Kobel. So more on the third one later, I guess. Adam Kobel, if you don't know the name, and I might be pronouncing it wrong, is one of the creators of the Dungeonworld storytelling game, which is this kind of attempt to make SJW story games appealing to D&D fans by tricking them into thinking they're buying an OSR game. Because it's actually a game that's run by this Apocalypse World system, which is a story gaming system, but it's been modded to play as if it was a D&D game, except that it still has all these story game elements where you're not really playing characters, you're not being characters in a real world. You're playing people playing a D&D game, basically. And story gaming is stupid and weird, but that's not the point of this video. We already knew that. Adam Kobel is, one of the creators of this game, which I should note was probably because of it being a kind of marketing scam, the most successful story game I can think of. It was hugely successful. He's very well known all across SJW RPG world, right? Everybody who is a leftist RPG community person that attacks D&D will know who Adam Kobel is, right? They'll know and love him. And he was also doing a bunch of Twitch games, I guess, streaming games on Twitch. Besides that, I'll note, Adam Kobel, you should really go look up his picture on a Google search, right? I'm not saying this because you should absolutely not stalk him, don't go harass him, don't do anything bad to him, right? But I just think you should see what he looks like, right? It's Koebel, right? Adam Kobel. Because if you look at the picture of this guy, it looks like what a 4chan memer would make up as a mockery of soy boy male feminists, so to say, right? That's the guy's appearance. I'm not telling, this isn't doxing him or anything, because he's very public about his looks and he's very proud of it. And you see a bunch of photos that he took of himself and stuff that he's promoted everywhere because he wants everyone to see his pink hair and how he's this kind of chubby bearded figure that is trying to look as harmless as possible to women, I guess, or something like that. There's, as some of you might know, there's this comic that was popular in I think it was the Chans. I don't know. I'm too old to know these things, but it showed up all over social media on Twitter, like conservative Twitter. Anytime a male feminist ends up doing something rapey, let's say, where they show you. Because it happens so often, right? And so they'll show you how some predatory creatures camouflage themselves to be able to more effectively hunt prey, and so it shows this snake hiding in the desert. Oh, there's Bondiga. Hello. So the snake hiding in the desert, or this tarantula covering itself with grass, and then it shows you this panel of this, let's say, chunky, bearded guy in a pink shirt that says, "This is what a feminist looks like," and he's got glasses, and his hair is all weird, and he's looking like leeringly at the women around him in this women's march movement, right? So like, this is a predator concealing himself, right? And that drawing could be a life drawing. Like, it could have been, someone looked at a picture of Kobel and said, that is exactly, so if you don't want to bother to look it up, that's what he looks like. He literally looks like that, right? So this is important, not because I'm body shaming him or anything like that, but because he has made a big point, literally even with making his own body into a billboard of SJW values and of this idea of himself as a male feminist, right? And then 2 days ago, in one of his live streams, he ended up, as you know, he was the DM, and he ended up basically forcing a rape scene onto a female player, laughing about it while everybody else was you know, in that group was very clearly not into it. And so much so that the next day they all quit. They all quit this like this, and this like you know, it's not Critical Role, but it had, I think, like 10,000 viewers, right? That's pretty good. You know, I can't say any of my videos get 10,000 viewers, so that's yeah, I gotta give that to him, that it was a good business before he destroyed it, right? He was yeah, there was this live stream gaming, it obviously with a real hipster bent to it, and he ended up, I guess, forgetting himself momentarily, and it's quite disturbing. You should try to find the video if you can. I suspect it's going to be erased very soon, memory hold, right? Trying to make everyone forget about Adam Kobel's misdeeds, right? But he was like cackling and laughing, and you know, basically saying something like, yeah, this is so funny, right? And nobody was answering him. So like, he looked like a sociopath, right? Like, he looked completely nuts. And everybody else, it was like, because you could see all the players' faces, right? It's like one of those multi-chat things. They were just horrified by this, right? And he thought it was great. And, you know, I've got to say, I've been a DM now for, well, the vast majority of my life. Let's put it like that way, right? And I'm not a young guy necessarily. So, yeah, I've been gaming now since the mid-'80s, right? And I've been gaming intensely. Like, even today, I run 2 sessions a week. Well, not literally right now. Right now I might be down to like 1 session a week, and I might be trying a virtual session. More on that later. But it's, you know, I've been running a whole bunch of games for a really, really long time. And I have never, in my entire career as DM, imposed a detailed non-consensual sex scene, pardon me, on any of my gamers, especially not a woman gamer. And I think a very large percentage of most of my gaming groups, right now I'd say about 30% of my gaming group is female, right? So it's like, I do have a lot of women that game with me, and I would never do that. And this guy thought it was totally cool to do that. And, you know, this is the guy that was condemning toxic masculinity. Well, my masculinity as a virtue, because there's nothing toxic about masculinity, tells me that you don't make people uncomfortable if you can avoid it, right? That is a very masculine trait, is to try to be respectful, right? And especially towards women. That the last thing you want to do is make a woman feel uncomfortable or afraid. That's a masculine trait. Raping isn't a masculine trait. Raping in traditional masculinity is something that weak men do. Men that aren't able to otherwise win over the heart of a woman, right? That's masculinity. Rape is not toxic masculinity. It's not part of masculinity. It is a failure of masculinity, right? So So this is, it makes sense that a bunch of people that are basically failed at being masculine are going to keep doing things that are really creepy and that are really, that make you really wonder just what kind of feminists they really are. Isn't that, that's kind of self-evident. They should have figured that out a while back now. And here's the funny thing, right? Is that Kobel, when asked about this, he blamed X cards, okay? Because apparently in his chat, and now if you don't know what an X card is, I've talked about this in other videos. It's an SJW invention that they want to force on every gaming group. They want every gaming group to have to do this, especially in conventions, right? Obviously they can't break into your home and demand that you use X cards, but in gaming cons, in gaming stores, in organized play, there might be ways to force DMs to regard the X card. And the X card is a thing that basically strips the power away from a DM, with the excuse being that, somebody vulnerable, a woman, a person of color, a gay person, obviously not a straight white male, that would not, they probably shouldn't even be given X cards, right? But people from the diversity cast, right, if any of them object for any reason, and they don't have to explain why, to what you are doing, they put up the X card and all gaming stops, and then they can dictate how your game changes, what you have to do different. And you have to obey, especially if you're a straight white male, right? So the X card is something that these people really advocate. And Kobel claims, and I suppose that this is probably true, that in that live stream show that he has, the X card was a thing, right? And that the players could have called the X card. They could have used their X card if the woman who was playing the character that was, that was involved in the robot rape scene was uncomfortable with it. She should have raised her X card. That's what Kobel said. He doesn't blame himself. He blames the lack of anybody having, raised an X card, which is really interesting because it means that if you think about his claim, right, if it's wrong, it means that he's just absolute scum. And that's probably the most likely thing because he's clearly not capable even of taking responsibility for his own perversion. He's just trying to find anything, and he goes throwing one of the cherished elements of feminist D&D totalitarianism under the bus to save his own ass, right? That's one case. Or the other case is that you say that he's right, and that what it means is that the X card can actually end up being something that creates more abuse than it solves. Because what happens, if people feel too ashamed or too embarrassed or too uncomfortable when a DM is doing something in a game that uses the X card to raise the X card, right? Especially, for example, there's social pressure, right? A lot of the problem with this consensus resolution that the SJWs so believe in, much more so than democracy, is that really consensus tends to be controlled by one or two people. Supposedly everyone has to agree, but really only the most strong personalities in the room have to agree, and then they kind of goad everyone else into doing what they want, right? So if you're a gamer in a group and everybody else in the group seems totally okay with it, and especially the cool guy seems okay with it, and the coolest guy in the room was Adam Koebel, creator of Dungeonworld, he says it's okay, how the hell can you raise an X card to him, right? And so this means that Kobel, in turn, either absolutely and innocently didn't believe that there was anything wrong. He thought everybody was totally into it because the X card wasn't raised, which means first, he's really bad at judging faces assuming that he had other people's faces on his screen. But second, it means that the X card should be abolished, right? Because clearly this is absolute proof that it does the opposite of what it intends, and it becomes a tool of intimidation because you have to raise your hand and say, I'm stopping everybody else's play and forcing my way on the whole group, and only the bossiest people will be willing to do that, right? Only the people that probably need that card the least will be brave enough to raise their hand and say, what matters to me should take precedence over all the rest of you. All your fun has to stop, and we're going to do something different, right? So either it's that, right, or or actually, yeah, he's well. The other option is that he's garbage. But both things can be true, right? The X card is garbage, and Kobel is garbage. So this has been a very amusing day for me. Something that cheered up the coronavirus blues, you could say. Really fascinating to see this, and fascinating to see people coming out now suddenly to try to defend and protect Dungeonworld. Right? The SJWs always play by two different rules. You see, Venger does some product that has a picture, a pencil drawing of a woman with bare breasts, and he needs to be removed from the hobby forever and every one of his games burned so that no one can ever see it again, right? That's the SJW stand on Venger Satanis. But Adam Kobel does a robot rape scene on someone who didn't want to in a live game that's viewed by 10,000 people, and he's laughing while he does it. But Dungeonworld must be protected. And in fact, Adam will be protected, right? You can bet anything that in a couple of weeks, Adam Koebel will be completely reformed and right back to getting to try to claim that other people are the toxic ones, right? He'll be right back on his virtue signaling high horse about how wonderful he is, right? Except, of course, that I'm never going to let him forget about the robot rape scene. That's going to be there forever, Adam. Forever. I'm always going to bring it up now. Always. Oh, my God, right? And, this is the double standard that these people use, right? Here, none of my games have anything that is remotely promoting even of something that would be like that, right? Not my published games, not my personal games. In my personal games, whenever there's a sex scene, we basically fade to black. First of all, more than anything for my own sake, because the last thing I want to see is some, grotesquely overweight gamer covered in Cheeto stains, talking with extreme detail about how he's, having sex with a hooker or something like that. Like, he can say, okay, my character wants to go to a brothel. Okay, you go to a brothel. Maybe we roll to see if something weird happens in the brothel. We're not going to describe the sex scene. The next day, you come back to the hotel or whatever, to the caravan or wherever you are, and move on, right? And in my books, there's nothing in my books that would have any kind of direction towards lasciviousness. And yet, they still get to try to claim I'm one of the toxic masculine people, right? That I'm one of the people that makes women in gaming unsafe. Adam Kobel literally made women in gaming unsafe on YouTube in front of 10,000 people. But he's going to get reformed, right? Even though his game, Dungeonworld, is based on the Apocalypse World game, which has a bunch of mechanics called sex moves, which are literally about how to regulate how sex happens in your game, okay? So this is... If you want to talk about problematic, there it is. But there's two different rules. If you're a liberal, if you're a leftist, if you're a social justice warrior, then you're allowed to say those things because you're part of the cool kids club, right? You're someone who is responsible. You're a feminist, a male feminist, or whatever else. And so you can do this stuff, and then you're probably going to be able to get away with it. And even if you're like a white male SJW, unless something very particular happens that makes everyone else turn against you. But if you're one of the really popular ones, like Adam Kobel is among the story gaming crowd, they're going to excuse it. They're going to let him back in, right? And that'll be just fine with them. It's just a matter of time. He's got to show the right penitence, which he will. He'll apologize for it. He'll explain, no, it was the X card, I got confused. And he'll talk about how much he worries, that he's so sorry about any women that might have been hurt by this thing that was not at all his fault, but whatever, right? And he'll talk about how the important thing we have to remember is to fight these evil Trump voting people in the OSR because they're the ones that are the real enemy, right? They're racist and sexist and misogynist and homophobic, even though we have no proof of any of that. But we're the ones that are the good people, even though I made a robot rape scene in front of a bunch of people on video, and the girl who was playing the character was totally not into it. But the bad guy is the pundit, right? Incidentally, the third man, right? There's a certain coincidence. I mean, I don't know about that Zach Sabbath and Adam Kobel had any collaboration with each other. But both of them were business collaborators in different ways with Daniel Fox, creator of Zweihander. So if you want to see the the listing of most likely to. There you go. Anyway, that's about it for today. Be sure to share this video. Post it anywhere, especially anywhere that'll piss off the SJWs. Make sure people know what these guys really are like. You know, so share the video, like the video. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And if you want games that aren't full of toxic leftism, but rather of virtuous ideals and heroism, you can't do worse than Dark Albion, or you could do a lot worse than Dark Albion or Lion and Dragon. Man, that's going to be quoted. Dark Albion, Lion and Dragon, and now the old school companion, medieval authentic gaming that is exciting and gritty, but also is full of potential for playing heroic characters trying to do heroic things in an imperfect world. And besides that, if you can't, let's say in these troubled times especially, you can't afford to spend, I think it's $29 for the Dark Albion hardcover, but let's say you can't do that. If you still want to support me, besides some Patreon and PayPal, there are links to that in the description below. What I'd really recommend is you pick up one of the RPG Pundit Presents books, PDF books, which are all relatively cheap. They're all like between 99 cents and maybe $4.99, and there's 99 issues of them now, so you've got all kinds of topics, medieval authentic stuff, like stuff that you can use for Dark Albion, Lion and Dragon, for any of your medieval D&D games if you want to make them have a more medieval style, or gonzo weird gaming, space fantasy stuff, like all kinds of really wacky gonzo stuff that is from my Last Sun series, is the other half of the RPG Pundit Presents series. So any of these will give you really interesting stuff. There's bound to be a topic. Look at the list of titles. There's going to be something you're going to like there. And you pick it up. You're giving me a tip, encouraging me to keep going in these tough times. And at the same time, you are getting something for yourself, for your games. And yeah, I hope everybody's keeping safe out there. Incidentally, I have now seen the final proof of RPG Pundit Presents 100. It's going to be a 40-page book. It's going to be available on print and PDF. It's going to be called Star Adventurer. And it's going to be pretty damn awesome, let me tell you. Stay tuned. Pretty soon I'm going to start posting on my social media what the cover looks like. And it should be out, I hope within a week. I don't know for sure, but that'll depend on my publisher. A week or two. But it is almost here now. I've literally seen it. All the writing and all the layout is complete. All we have to do is get the proofs, and then it's good to go. So stay tuned for that. You're going to get a 40-page OSR space fantasy RPG based on the same kind of mechanics as Lion and Dragon. Really good stuff in there, and yeah, I hope you'll like it. But for now, while you're waiting, pick up any issues of RPG Pundit Presents, and also, especially, share this video. Thank you very much. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Half Volcano plus Blue Boar. Take care, everyone.